Good to see you, everyone. My name is Robbie Howell, yada, yada, yada. Let's get into my second ever TheoryRECRAFT 19 builds in. Can you frickin' believe it? I've done 19. Actually, 20 of these damn things, but I'm not including the crossbow in this one. I wanted to wait a little bit to let feedback come in. And also, frankly, I couldn't finish it in time. Like, it's been a pretty busy couple of days for me. Just look at all these beautiful civilization ensigns and units. Ah, it brings a tear to my eye. And we're going to be going over all 19 of these, though I'd say maybe 5 or 6 have very minor changes made to them. As always, if you'd like to see the fully updated documents to any of these things, I have a link in the description of the stream. I think that's a thing that should lead you directly to a Google folder that has every single build, including the updated, like the most recently updated iterations of each build, as well as all previous ones. And if you want to see change logs, they're on the bottom right of each document. Let's jump in to the minor changes, starting with the Georgians. This is my first build on this channel, and it definitely showed. Like, it was kind of clunky, but I'm still quite happy with it. First thing is that we are changing their forage bonus. On my last recraft, I gave them like a completely new bonus because they were very underpowered, which made their forage bushes last 100% longer. The great commenter, Zastor994, gave some really nice mathematical explanations that helped me kind of decide to tone this down to a 66% longer lasting forage bush bonus. Might still be too much, but civilization was a little bit weak. All right, and secondly, they have a new civilization ensign. When I first started this out, I literally was just like ripping random shields online, but now I'm a little bit better at graphic design, so I made this one, which includes this really cool like Georgian symbol. I don't really know the name of it, but I found it to be rather prominent and like feature quite a lot in their art, so I wanted to make use of it, and I think this looks a lot prettier. Hope you guys think so too. And that, I think, is the extent of all of the Georgian changes. Oh, and they get Gambesons. Like, that's going to be a recurring thing, is the Gambeson update came in just as I was, like, finalizing most of these recrafts, so I'm just going to be kind of tossing in who gets Gambesons, who doesn't. Georgians do. Nextly, my Umayyads build is being renamed. Finally, officially, it's being renamed to the Syrians. I referenced this way back in my ethnic dynastic video. And now it has come to pass. The prophecy is true. The Umayyads are now Syrians. And they get Gambesons. Yippee-ki-yay. Well, as they should. They are an infantry civilization. Nextly, the Arquebusier. This is a build that changed a lot after my initial build of it. First change. Their attack debuff is now a percentage. So when an Arquebusier shoots a unit, it nerfs their attack by, I think, a flat 25%, might be 33. It's one of those two. But it does not stack. Previously it did. So if like 5 Arquebusiers shot a target, they'd have -5 attack flat. This just makes it such that, and the debuff lasts shorter. So this just makes it so that the Arquebusier is more consistently going to like chunk enemy attack coming at it, but it's no longer going to have as high of a ceiling or as many implications. And I updated the civilization availability for it and all the other units in this presentation to accommodate the new civilizations that I've designed since then. Jurchens, another build that I did just a ton of changes on after I initially released it. There's another one. Their team bonus, which makes has to do with like ally stables. It now applies to civilizations that cannot get stables to allow them to build them and build Sholotl warriors. Death in the Shape of a Lovely Italian. This one was entirely you, my guy. That was a fantastic suggestion, and I gladly stole it. And additionally, I retooled the fortified house again with help from my very patient commenters. It now upgrades faster, and it garrisons, but it costs a little more stone, and it's weaker. And it also shoots in Feudal Age. So trying to just find a balance between it being an obnoxious cheese strategy and it being what it was supposed to be, which is like a house wall that can shoot back, or like kind of an adapted Khmer bonus, because now since it can garrison villagers, you can use it to protect them. So hopefully I got the balance right this time. It does have a minimum range, I believe. And its range is pretty crappy, so it's going to be very hard to use these for Feudal Age tower rushes at all. They do get Gambesons. And lastly, the Dutch are having literally like 2 changes. I updated the art on their unique unit, and they don't get gamma sins. Woo! I also was suggested by a commenter to update their greeting, because I think he is a Dutch fellow himself. I think that his name is George Van, and he said that the greeting I had was like the noun version of the greeting, like a greeting rather than greetings to you, you know? And so he suggested gegroet. I think I got it. Gegroet. Dutch people in chat, if there are any of you, tell me if I got that one right. So yeah, hopefully that is a more accurate and reflective greeting for the Dutch. And that brings us to the end of the minor changes section. All right, I think I've caught up. Let's move on to the Lombards. This was the second build I ever did. It is, I think, one of the jankiest builds that I ever did. It has this like hyper aggro infantry strategy. Like if Goths hit their power spike in Feudal Age and then sucked late game, and they were jank as hell. So first thing, new civilization ensign for them. The old one was just a shield I ripped. This one I think is a lot prettier, still keeps that nice blue and red with the Triskel on it. I think it looks a lot nicer while still keeping the same idea. So, but besides this civilization ensign, there's a lot of changes to this civilization. So first of all, they have one civilization bonus that made it such that once you researched a ton of technologies, you unlocked a bunch of unit upgrades. Now, I kept the idea for that because I liked the idea of it like showing them transitioning throughout the ages from like their barbarian days to their masters of Italy days. But now it is only about university technologies. So once you research a bunch of university technologies, you steadily unlock the Arbalester, the Cavalier, and the Siege Onager only. So giving them some really nice late game power to transition into. Secondly, they had a team bonus where their villagers were a lot tougher versus enemy infantry, archers, and cavalry, but not siege and buildings or other villagers. And they also had a team bonus which made their feudal age blacksmith technologies research instantly. I swapped those two and I nerfed the tougher villagers aspect. So now they and all their teammates' villagers are slightly tougher against enemy infantry, archers, and cavalry. And instead, the Lombards have the instant smith technologies as a civilization bonus. Nextly, they had a bonus where under 50 population, their military trained really fast. That was very cheese, and it's now replaced with their rams benefit 100% more from garrisoned infantry. I really like infantry garrisoning in rams as a mechanic. It felt fitting for the Lombards, seeing as how much invading and conquesting they did and just smashing their way into towns. The best way to represent that was with rams. And they did already have a very good siege tech tree, generally, not very good, but like a good siege tech tree overall. So it felt like a good way to kind of give them another identity beyond just infantry. It's now infantry and a little bit of siege. Next, their unique unit, the Arimanos. I better defined its stats, I gave it some new art, and it is now no longer being their sole unique unit. It even has another upgrade. Right now, the Arimanos, or previously the Arimanos, was available from Feudal Age. Or was it Dark Age? Can't remember. One of those. I think it was Feudal Age. But then could be promoted into an elite Arimanos in Imperial Age. It now kind of like a Camel Scout. It like gets better automatically in Castle Age, but then in Imperial Age you could choose to upgrade it to a Gasindio. And I love using specific names instead of just elite blank when I can, and gives an opportunity to have some other cool art. Now they have a new Castle Age unique unit, or a castle only unique unit, the Gastald. This is a very heavy infantry unit that when you task it onto a building, it will try to convert that building like a monk. But you can override this. So why did I go this route? Well, the Gastald was kind of like an English reeve. It was this like this authority figure whose job it was to kind of oversee a particular region. They had some judicial control, they had some executive control, and I felt it was a cool way to kind of reinforce the Lombards' colonization and invasion identity while giving them another fun unit to play with and like a very, very tanky frontliner to help them give their infantry armies a bit more staying power. And lastly, their unique technology, Gaudathinks, now can be researched any number of times. Previously, what it did is whenever you research a technology, your infantry temporarily gained an armor buff. Random, but it was pretty cool. Now it just makes it so that your infantry gain a good armor buff temporarily, but you can research this again after a cooldown elapses for a slightly increased cost. So hopefully it should allow for some really sick timings, which is a big part of this civilization. And I love playing with re-researchable technologies. Like I did it with the recent Novgorodians build. It's just a mechanic I favor. A bunch of tech tree updates. Like I completely overhauled their tech tree. Not going to get into it in too much detail. Their architecture now goes from Central European in Feudal Age to Mediterranean in Castle Age and onwards, which I think is very fitting again of their trajectory as a people. And I gave them a bunch of minor updates, sources, blah, blah, blah. You can take a look if you want. I'm not going to go into too much detail about them. And they do get gambesons. What a surprise! So that, I think, brings us to the end of this section of the video. So that's all the changes I've done to the Lombards. And unlike almost all the other changes in this video, these were entirely from me. Like me going back to my very old build and saying, this is kind of ass. Let's see how I can make it a little bit better. So no credit for this one. This was me. And as such, if it sucks, it is entirely my responsibility to bear. And let's move on to the next build in this presentation. That being the Wagadougans. Another of my very, very early builds. This one was much better than the Lombards one in my opinion. I really liked the identity, but the ensign was kind of ass. And so we're going with this beautiful gold mask. I really like masks as ensigns. I've experimented with them a lot and I intend to keep doing so. And originally when I was looking them up, I only found this kind of lame stone head. This one gives a lot more color and character to the civilization. So that's the new ensign. Second of all, we have another rename on our hands. The term Wagadougans I was fairly happy with. It is technically accurate, but the Wagadougans Empire was a largely Soninke undertaking. The Soninke are one of the major African peoples. You could argue, I think that they're kind of an umbrella term that encapsulates a lot of other ones, whereas the Malians are Mandinka people. Soninke and Mandinka are obviously related in many ways, but also butted heads on many occasions. And overall, I think that Soninke is a much more in-theme name that allows the civilization to cover more ground than just the Wagadougans Empire properly. Kind of getting back to my video on ethnic versus dynastic naming. Now, first change. So they previously were able to make camels in the Feudal Age, but then Dynasties of India came out, and Johannes Eyolfsson down in the comments section said, you might want to just give them camel scouts, Robbie. That would be a lot more elegant. So I did. And they now have a huge new bonus to compensate for that miss, which is that their gold miners remotely drop, just like Khmer farmers, just like Swiss lumberjacks. This reinforces the Soninke identity as a gold civilization. Oh, excuse me, hiccup. I literally classify them as camels and gold, and I think this really helps reiterate that identity. I don't think it will be that strong. Like, I don't think it will be so strong I need to nerf it in any way, but I think it opens up some interesting options for them as a civilization. I also took their unique, like, heavy camel unit, the Kureleme, and I gave it some better definition, and a bunch of small, minor updates overall. Again, thank you so much, Johannes. It's not common I get comments on these older videos giving suggestions. If you guys have any thoughts on any of these builds, by the way, you can go leave comments on those videos. You could leave comments here. I really should have a better forum for this. Maybe that's why I should be getting a Discord server. That could be a good idea. May still well happen in the not too distant future. And with the Soninke covered, not a big set of changes, we're going to tackle another of the smaller updates I made. Oh, they don't get gambesons, by the way. To the Mossi, another of my earlier builds. They came right after the Soninke. I liked the Mossi build, but I got a comment recently suggesting that the way that their villager bonus works now, because what it was when an enemy villager died to a Mossi soldier, the Mossi's next villager was cheaper and created faster. Kind of in reference, not to them, they didn't take that many slaves actually. This is more in reference to them just like really aggressively vassalizing everyone around them. But a commenter said, wow, that sounds very similar to one of the original scout cavalry mechanics proposed for Age of Empires 2, where they could capture enemy villagers. And I was like, that's not exactly what I was going for, because this is more about forced vassalization rather than slavery. And I mean, the two are somewhat comparable, but still, I think there's a distinction to be made between them. So now, the bonus works that whenever you kill an enemy villager, your town center works much faster for a small period of time. It should still come to like a similar end result, but it has the advantage of being usable to help you age up quicker, which is huge. The downside is that you don't get any cheaper, like you don't get any discounts on the things you're working on through this iteration of the bonus. And that commenter was Phoenix Alaris, I believe, who made that one. So thank you very much, Phoenix. I may have forgotten to credit you here, but I will not ever forget you in my heart. And they also do not get Gambesons. Next build on the list, another one I haven't done a ton to, the Romans. This was obviously in collaboration with the commenter, Lorenzo M. He's been a great collaborator to work with. You're going to see more of him on the channel in the not too distant future. Let's talk about what we did with the Romans here. First of all, another new civilization ensign. This one looks much sexier. No credit is mine on this one. I obviously credit all of the places that I get my ensigns from. But this one, I didn't do anything to. I just found this awesome shield and I was like, oh yeah, we need more purple, you know? Like more, there aren't enough civilization emblems that have purple in them. In fact, I don't think I can think of a single one. Prove me wrong if you can. And if anyone deserves to be purple, it's the Romans. Let's take a look at what else we have changed. Gotta have some big changes for the Romans, guys. Coming in.
They don't get Cannon Galleon.
Oh no. No more Cannon Galleon for you. Small changes for the Romans only, as well as a couple of other minor updates, tech timers and playstyle and blah-de-blah. Also, let's take a quick look at the Footman over here. I have made two groundbreaking changes for him. One is that they benefit from Gambesons, and also they now have their civilization availability grid expanded. I'm not actually sure I included that on this presentation, so let's just move on to the next slide, shall we? Oh, and the Romans get Gambesons. How could I forget that, of course? Let's move on. Next one. We're getting towards some of the big ones. The Swedes. First of all, the civilization ensign has been tweaked. I made it a little prettier, but that's very minor. Their unique unit is now called the Varangian Guard, because it's true, Varangian was the name of the people instead of the name of like a specific unit type, even though that's how they were often shortened to. I better define the stats of the unit, and also I made two big changes to them beyond the aesthetic one of giving them a new portrait, because they looked a little bit similar to the Danish unique unit, the Long Axeman. They no longer can build the Longship, which was one of their former abilities. Instead, the Varangian Guard is available map-wide to all allies, but their price fluctuates as more exist. That means when you first, if you're playing 1v1, when you first build a castle, your first couple of Varangian Guard are going to be extremely cheap. But if you mass up 60 of them, they're going to be ridiculously expensive. Far more expensive than they're probably worth. This means that if you can keep sending out like little strike teams of them, you can make use of like one of the cheapest units for its ability in the game. And if you're in a team game, it means that any one of your allies can be making Varangian Guards when they need them, but you'll have to coordinate to make sure they don't all jack up the price of this powerful unit. Nextly, I've updated both the Viking and the Longship to match the updates I made in the Danes build, and I also updated their likelihometer and unique skins, as well as some other minor updates and things of that nature. Big thanks to Mr. Mike Oxmall, the biggest Ock in my heart. He had some fantastic input on the original Swedes build. It led to a lot of the changes I made in the Danes build, and his idea for the Varangian Guard being available to allies but having price fluctuate was one of the single best comments I ever received. Like, I absolutely, just in terms of like the raw mechanical brilliance of it. That's such a cool idea, and I wish I had thought of it. So thank you, Mike. Your Ock will always be big to me. They don't get Gambesons, by the way, the Swedes. I felt like this was a good way to make their infantry a little more interesting. But I also wanted to take the opportunity to give a huge shout out to the commenter Manu K. So he commented and said, hey, thanks for using my Burger Jarl art. And I was like, what the hell? That was you? Look at this dude. Look at his smug face being so glorious with all his hair blown in the wind. It's a beautiful piece of art, and I highly recommend you check out Manu K's DeviantArt. Manu K, you're the best. Okay, let's take a look at the Swiss. It's Swiss time, guys. We're gonna see how crappy the Swiss was. I needed to make a lot of changes to this civilization. So let's begin with their civilization bonuses. So previously, their remote dropping lumberjacks had a debuff. I was actually suggested to remove this because, as a commenter said, that's going to make it much more of a penalty early game than it's going to be a bonus late game. And the Swiss are supposed to be, you know, strong economically, so I thought it made sense. They now just have very good lumberjacks. Their crossbow bonus is now largely changed. It now gives a bonus to speed as well as an attack bonus versus archers. And it hits all units in the archery range. So what does this... Excuse me. This is obviously in reference to the fact that it wasn't just crossbows that were supporting the big pike squares the Swiss were known for. They also were supported largely by gunners, and these very kind of quick-moving, skirmishing gunners. The reason I went in this direction is because a lot of people said, wow, this civilization is really weak to archers. So by making all archery range units kind of pseudo-skirmishers and spacing it out between the ages, like the other bonus was, I'm hoping that will kind of counter that innate downside. Next, the self-trading thing is now limited to 15 carts maximum, and I also clarified a little bit of trade cart logic, like how would they act if a town center died that they were trading with, that sort of thing. This means that if you're playing 1v1, you can just click, and queue up a full 15 stack and forget about it. And I do think a couple of people thought, oh wow, this is a team bonus that is actually only good in 1v1. I actually think this would be usable in team games as well, as kind of a stopgap between early on when you can't set up a full trade line and later on when you can. So I do think it would have some use in team games. Next, their unique unit, the Reislaufer. It now has -1 melee armor, +1 pierce armor at base, and gets a further 1/1 of both armors at elite form. It was commented that the Reislaufer is very weak to range attacks as of now. Kind of intentional, but probably took it too far. And the further armor at elite represents just how good their armor got a little bit later during the Swiss Golden Age. I now have them deal bonus damage to unique units rather than levies. Now, this was specifically in reference to the fact that oftentimes the Swiss were fighting the cream of the crop in Europe, not just, stinky peasants, right? And so it doesn't really make sense that they would be good against chaff, rather good against the best of the best, in addition to cavalry and stuff. So I really like that change. I think that makes the unit a little sexier. And so we'll see how that one sticks. Nextly, the city center. It's getting a bunch of changes because in my original draft, I was way too conservative with it. It's now a lot cheaper to create, like drastically cheaper to create. It has +1 range, and it also has a little bit more armor. Overall, it will still get stomped by a castle. However, when you garrison a villager in a city center, each villager contributes 1 full additional arrow, rather than just like a portion of one. This will make it so that garrisoning your city center makes them actually really, really dangerous, especially if you can get a full stack of villagers inside of them, and should give them a kind of uniquely defensive role while also exemplifying, I don't know, kind of like the Swiss city-state mentality. The city center, we're bringing our citizens here, and we will fight back, So I think that this is going to be a better way of going about it. This was not my idea. Commenter had this idea. We're going to go into all the people who helped with this build a little bit later. Additionally, the city center is now impassable by enemies while still being permeable to allies in the same way that a normal town center is, but they can no longer train a unit and research a technology at the same time. Before I move on, anything else about that? I think that's self-explanatory. Swiss Guard, the Imperial Age unique technology. The cost is now retuned. However, so it's easier to get overall, I believe, but allies need to individually upgrade their Reislaufer to elite. They do still benefit from Swiss technologies, but for the elite upgrade, they need to fund that cost themselves. And since plenty of people asked, petards can be made at the Siege Workshop, just like trebuchets with that speed penalty. Do I think it will be relevant? No, but I think it's a necessary add. And fine, I'll give them plate mail armor, you poo heads. You know how much I like removing black spec technologies. A lot of people said that was just too harsh, and I agree with you. Okay, we're giving them plate mail armor, but no bracer. They don't get that damn bracer technology. I think overall, you can see that this is mostly buffs with a couple of minor nerfs, and I think it should make this Swiss civilization an awful lot stronger and an awful lot more playable. Before we sign off on this one, a couple clarifications on history. I got some really good feedback, specifically from commenters Divigos Power and Edelweiss, just wanting me to clarify that I do simplify a lot of things in my history sections out of necessity and also just because I'm a doo-doo brain who can't research properly. And to clarify, the Swiss were not really ever a truly unified power. Like, even after the Confederacy, they were still infighting. There were still all sorts of times that they were at each other's throats. And I do also oversimplify how neutrality kicked in towards the end of their kind of imperial arc. It really didn't. It took a lot longer to. The Battle of Marignano was more just what slowed down their expansion efforts. And so in summary, Swiss history, if you will, is an awful lot more complicated than I was forced to summarize it in my history section. Also, of course, it's not just because I was summarizing it. It's because I also just didn't communicate it effectively enough. So take that with a massive pinch of salt, and I appreciate being taught a lot in the comments section by people who know an awful lot more about it than me. For Ensign, I was also suggested this by commenter Divicos Power. The good old plus is obviously very iconic, but he suggested that we could also possibly look at the canton flags of Uri, which is this bull one, and then I believe Unterwalden is the one with the keys, if we wanted to do something a little more unique for their civilization ensign. The bull is certainly cool. I think it might be a little glaring with that bright yellow, though I do really like it, and it would certainly stand out from others. I think the key is really beautiful and intricate, so I'd kind of be more inclined to go with that one if I was forced to pick between. But I'll leave this as an open question. Which ensign do you guys prefer? Do you prefer the bull of Uri? Do you prefer the key of Unterwalden? Or do you prefer the good old cross, as we all know it? Before we sign off on the Swiss, I have some thanks to give. Major thanks to commenters David GG, Simbelmina, Divicos Power, Instant Kevlar, Lorenzo M, Fergus Shan, Edelweiss, Zaster994, CG, 222120222120, and many, many others for all of the fantastic input on this build. It needed the love, it needed the help, and it delivered in spades. I think this might still have more comments than any other video on my channel, and I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot. Moving on to the Zapotecs. Obviously, this was another build that did really, really well after the Swiss. I was quite happy with it, but it had some problems, not as many as the Swiss, the first of which being the masked ensign. I think it's a beautiful mask. I really quite like it, but with the help of a commenter who gave me a ton of details on the region and his thoughts on it, I think that this new Civ ensign is much better. I did a poll on it a little while back. People seem to really like it. I think it was like 80 to 20 or something. We're going with it. It's very, very thematic. And I did all the graphic design myself, rather than just ripping a random image. I ripped several random images instead and remixed them. Now, first change. You know how some of their university and some techs are available an age early? Well, now any university tech that's available early, you get half off. That should make it such that, like, feudal age fortified walls, actually viable. Next of all, the university boosting work rate bonus, that has been toned down by, like, between 2.5 and 5%, I think, something like that. Nextly, the auto conversion mechanic. I thought it wouldn't be too broken, but it turns out that it's just because I suck at the game. And so, yeah, it was probably broken, and so that effect has now been shifted onto the Danzantes technology, and the previous Danzantes effect, where you refund cost of dead units, is now a team bonus, benefiting all of your allies and you, but it's dramatically toned down. Now, why'd I go this route? Well, remember, the Zapotec religion is quite possibly one of the foremost influences on all other Mesoamerican religions. Because you look at pretty much all Mesoamerican religions, and they had very similar themes. Obviously, they had different preeminent gods, they had different names for the gods, different exact creation myths, but there were major through lines running through them, like with any cluster of peoples living together. And the Zapotecs were one of the biggest reasons that this overarching Mesoamerican religion was so cohesive. They were one of the oldest civilizations in the region and had enormous religious control. But I talked about all of that in my build for them. So now that kind of refund effect is now a team bonus. And the old team bonus of garrisoning monasteries, that has been removed outright. A lot of people said it was very cheesy, very annoying, very douchey, and I kind of agree. Like, I couldn't really find any way to make that more fair. Though, in one of the design contest builds I received, someone did send something that's similar to this mechanic and actually found a way to make it work quite well. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. Next, the Makar Guardian unique unit. Its taunt effect no longer affects siege. So if they get tagged by an enemy siege onager, the siege onager won't be forced to keep shooting at them. Very nasty exploit. Thanks for catching that, whoever caught it. I wouldn't want to keep that in the game. The Jaguar Warrior regional unit now has an attack weakness against heavy cavalry. Pardon, not attack weakness. Heavy cavalry do bonus damage to them. Not a ton, but enough that they'll pretty much always win fights. And their speed is retuned. They now have higher speed before elite upgrade, less speed after. They also benefit from gambesons. So overall, side grade for the Jaguar Warrior. The Slinger regional unit costs plus 20 food. A commenter pointed out, what the heck? This is like a third, like 2/3 the price of both other trash units that they get access to. You got to make it equivalent resources. And so I did. So they're still food only, but it's the same total amount of resources as a skirmisher or a halberdier. And lastly, the Atlatl regional unit now has more speed, both base and elite. I didn't want to make them obviously an exact match to the cavalry archer, but I did want them to kind of fill a similar niche, and giving them more speed should help them do so. A bunch of minor updates besides, like Leometer, playstyle, blah blah blah, and they do get gambesons. For this build, major thanks to Jason Smith, Fergus Shan, Divicos Powers, Sin Belmina, Steve Strangelev, Zaster994, Paolo Apaez, Jorge Emilio, and Juan M for all of the help with this build, as well as many, many others. You guys were fantastic. And even though the Zapotecs didn't have nearly as many problems as the Swiss build did, I think it's benefited a lot from your feedback. Hope you guys are enjoying. Let's move on to the Danes. The Danes. This was a collab with Johannes Eilson. It was a very fun time. Honestly, it was after like a progression of very weird builds that had a lot of edits needed. The Danes were like pretty easy. First of all, their ship repair bonus is now staggered by age. So you won't just blitz out massive repairs from Dark Age onward. The speed is only going to hit maximum in Imperial. Secondly, their team bonus that is like an anti-Saracen market bonus and makes enemy commodity fees worse is less strong. It was commented that having it just be directly proportionate to the Saracens one isn't right, because a penalty tends to be harder to play around than a bonus is beneficial, and also it affects all enemy teammates, which is a big deal. Excuse me. Okay. Next, major change to the longship. This also applies to the Swedes. It now only shoots in feudal age if you have units on it. Thank God. That should make it so much fairer for longships to be on water maps, because the issue was before, if you made some in Dark Age, run them into the enemy fishing fleet, on feudal they just start shooting everything. This should make them a lot better. They gain up to +2 shots based on their crew, and when you upgrade them to the Drakkar, they can now shoot 1 shot when completely uncrewed. I think this is a much better change overall, and should still keep their flavor intact. Nextly, their unique technology, Danegeld. A clarification, it does not steal resources from your opponent. Instead, you just get a percentage of whatever they get as like an additional dividend all to yourself. So they won't get less resources from it. Also, the commenter Eric DW, is you, recommended this excellent little text blurb come on screen when you research Danegeld, because it does make sense that all players would be notified, which is, the Dane player has imposed a merciless Danegeld on you, extorting the location of all your town centers, markets, and monasteries, and minorly profiting off of your gold income. Dun, dun, dun. Excellent. This is all on Eric. Thank you so much for this advice, man. I love this edition. And I have another one similar to it a little later on. Next, with their ship repair bonus, especially now that it is most impactful in Imperial Age, something came to my mind, and this is on the sheet as well. Having repair be manual only in game is, in my mind, very difficult. Obviously, pros will rarely feel it, but especially for players of lower experience, it feels like we need to have a way to make repairers have an aggressive mode. And here's my proposal for it. Ever played Warcraft 3? Well, if you have, you'll know that there are some abilities where if you right-clicked the icon on your screen, it would make it do this and have like a little go around the edges. My proposal is that the repair button on Villager's command card be able to be right-clicked to task them to auto-repair. Just anything in their line of sight, they go over, and if it's a ship, they'll beckon the ship over, right? And I think this is especially important for the Danes because since now they have such a major focus on repairing ships late game, it just doesn't seem reasonable that you would have to just manually click on your massive fuck-off fleet and have them all come over one by one. Just sounds awful. So I think auto repair would be a very good inclusion to add to the game. I could see me toying around with other mechanics like this later on. They don't get gambesons. Kind of like the Swedes, I didn't want them to have as heavy of an infantry focus in the same way as the Norwegians, the third of the Scandinavian sister trio. But like the Swedes, they will still have quite strong infantry. And a history clarification that I wanted to throw in on the front of the Danes. Kind of like with the Swiss. This is from commenter Bjark Kier. I think I'm getting your name right. Tell me if I'm screwing it up, bud. Down over in the chat, hey Bjark, thanks again, man. And he wanted to clarify that the unrest periods I talked about in Denmark are overstated. They were definitely like a bunch of major civil wars and was more tumultuous than average. And so it's still a valid identity for the Civ, but I definitely overstated it, even if it's like a little bit up to interpretation. Like in summary, Denmark was not this like a rugged anarchy. Like it wasn't a hellhole in the Middle Ages. It was doing all right. But it was not nearly to the degree that I kind of related it in my history section. So please don't let me lead you astray. He also suggested that maybe the Harald Bluetooth campaign could switch to Svein Forkbeard as like the last two scenarios, which I thought was very cool. So thank you, Barack. I really appreciate you contributing to the history section of this. You know a whole lot more about it than I do. And hopefully you still feel like I did the history justice in the build. And thanks to Bjark, of course, as well as Fergus Shan, Guru Gru, Simbelmina, Byzantine Historian, and many, many others for contributions to this particular Danes build. I was really happy with how this came out. Johannes did a great job toning down my many eccentric tendencies when designing civilizations. And I would say that this was my 14th build. I would say that as of the time this was released, this was the best build on the channel. But since then, I think it has been supplanted. Let's move on to the hunting dog. This was a build I was really surprised the amount of positive response there was to. Like, I thought people would think this was stupid, but a lot of people really liked it and had a lot of ideas on how to make it better. Like, overall, I'd say it was less controversial than my Arquebusier build. So first of all, the dog's running speed is now only 25% and it only works within line of sight of a target. This is not actually how hunting wolves work now, from what I understand. And that seems a little broken because you can just sprint across the map. So it now only works on when you're tasking the dog to attack a unit within its line of sight. Next, hunting dogs benefit half as much as normal cavalry from the bloodlines and husbandry technology. Zaster994 really pushed me in this direction, and he's right. Like, it is a little weird that the hunting dog is a unit that kind of benefits from 3 different buildings: town center, stable, and barracks. But I think that makes it kind of unique, and it does fit very well. But don't worry, I have nerfed it fittingly to match. The Warhound now has -1 dodge and doesn't get more in imp, and the dodge has less of a recharge. So they're less of a dodge tank, and instead actually have like an okay HP pool. Still not enough to be like a really good frontline unit by any means. Nextly, herdables in a dog line of sight now match its speed. This was a suggestion I think got a bunch of upvotes. It makes a ton of sense. I love the inclusion, and it gives you another reason to use them very early on to get your sheepers back, especially on maps like Ghost Lake, where there's a lot of far-flung sheep that you actually want to grab quickly. Next, you can pet the doggy. Villagers can now be tasked onto a dog to pet them and restore their HP. It's a very slow restoring rate. This is mostly going to be an Easter egg, but we have an animation for it. They can use the forager animation, you know, the like thing. You can just use that on the dog. Won't even have to do like a whole new animation set for them. I think it would be lovely. And a bunch of people requested that one. Nextly, if you train a Warhound from a barracks instead of a town center, it takes like substantially longer to train. This should make them a little harder to mass up late game. Nextly, the hunting horn technology now costs +50 wood. It's a little bit faster to research, and you now research it at the mill. Actually, I think it's slower to research now. Can't remember if that's plus or minus. A bunch of people said there's no reason to get hunting horn because you need to use your TC. That's a really good point, and it took me some convincing because I really liked the idea of the trade-off, but overall it's probably just safer to have it at the mill and give it a little bit more of a cost to compensate. So hunting horn now works like this. I also updated the civilization availability for the doggos and loose threads, blah, 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 some stuff like that. An open question, a couple of them for you guys. So I got a bunch of really great suggestions from commenters that I want to hear your take on, either in chat now, in comments later, whatever else. First of all, Bjarke recommended that we have a regional hunting cheetah variant. These were used, quite commonly used, in parts of Africa and the Middle East and India. And so having maybe the hunting dog promote into a hunting cheetah, kind of weird, or having it be just a replacement regional, or something else entirely, could all be ways of going about this. I like the idea a lot, but I want to see whether you guys think it would be too much. Nextly, a capstone technology of some kind for the hunting dog line. Something like pure breeds. And my idea behind pure breeds was to make it something kind of like Siege Engineers-ish, where it was just like an Imperial Age technology that really made it feel strong, you know what I mean? But also would benefit team-wide dogs and give allies access to your powerful dogs, because part of what made dog breeds so valuable, or pure breeds made dog breeds very valuable and desired as commodities that could then be traded to other civilizations. So I thought some sort of team-oriented capstone tech could be kind of fun. And lastly, a commenter, Mr. Guy, recommended a technology to allow hunting dogs, instead of having a big line of sight, to kind of be able to briefly detect enemy movement in fog of war, or like follow tracks left by enemies on the ground. Kind of like in StarCraft 2, the Terran signal tower, like detection towers. I don't really know what they're called. Now, I think this is an extremely cool idea, but it might just be too much sauce. So I'd like to hear what you guys think about it. So again, hunting cheetah, pure breeds capstone technology, and then like a guard dogs or tracking dogs technology to let dogs kind of see movement or see tracks into the fog of war. I'd like to hear your thoughts on them. And thanks, as always, to Will Ferris, Leif Caldere, Manu K, Bjarke Kjær, Sindalmina, Mr. Guy, JH, Jack Opolsky, Zaster994, Ira Shanch, Jason Smith, and many, many others for all the input on this build. There were a lot of comments on this one that had a lot of very excited ideas, and I'm really happy how this one turned out. Let's move on. It's Egyptians time. First of all, they're classified as an archers and cavalry civilization. This is not the most important change, but was probably a necessary one. I had them classified as an elite civilization, but as commenter Zaster994 pointed out, their champions are mediocre. Excuse me. And so why bother, again, excuse me. So why bother giving them that tag if it's only applying to 2 units that are really only applying to archers and cavalry? So that's the first change. Now on to the good stuff. So that close range archer damage bonus, I love. I love the flavor of it so much. But a bunch of people pointed out that, man alive, this would be broken. And I have 2 changes that I think will help it a lot. 1, it now does -1 damage in Imperial Age. And more importantly, it only does the bonus damage at 1 range, not 2 range anymore, which will make it much harder to actually get maximum oomph out of it. It also no longer benefits the skirmisher line, which will make the Egyptians much worse in Trash Wars, because I think that skirmishers with that thing would be disgusting. Commodity bonus. The old Egyptians trading commodity bonus removed from the civilization. You guys convinced me. I was trying to give the Egyptians a shitty economy, but in so doing, I gave them 3 good economy bonuses. I am done. And so that's gone. Am I happy to remove it? No. That's my favorite Saracen bonus, but I do think it could fit very, very well on other civilizations, and this should properly stick the Egyptians into the whole of bad economy that they belong, along with a couple other changes I'll talk about later. Next, the treaty bonus. Whoa! This was probably the single most controversial bonus I've ever put in a video, and it was deserved. I didn't think about the douche potential, and I'm a dummy for not. It now only applies to a 12-tile radius around your starting town center. Kind of like on Nomad, but it makes your villagers immune, not just about placement. Now, it will still be good. I think it will still be quite strong. And I did a bunch of tests on random maps. 12 tiles is just enough to grab like a chunk of most of your starting resources, but is rarely going to grab all of them. So it's going to be a lot more risky. And I think I got it right this time, guys. Can't be used for douching anymore. Get out of here. It also would have a very clearly displayed radius visible to all players, as well as a timer, so people could see how long the treaty lasted for, which I think is a necessary addition. Oops, excuse me. The university bonus is now been nerfed. It still does the same thing, it just is a little less good at it. And their unique Abtal unit, it now costs a little more wood and is a little bit slower. Why did I do this? Well, a couple people pointed out that, especially since the Abtal benefits more from the archer bonus damage bonus, that would make it very, very devastating, even at close ranges. And as such, it also no longer does bonus damage to levies, so it has no bonus damage whatsoever, and it has a slightly less benefit from the civilization bonus effect overall. In summary, the Abtal will still be an incredibly good brawler archer that is very hard to kill. I think that this will make it more of a consideration to... What am I trying to say here? I think this will make it such that arbalests are more of a consideration instead of the Abtal, or have them be like a front line, rather than them being like probably the best thing to make in most situations. Next, their tech tree, their poor tech tree. Can we get some F's in the chat, boys, for the Egyptians' tech tree? No more bombard cannon, or elite cannon galleon, or heavy demo. No more bowsaw! They lose bowsaw. I think that this is the thing that's going to make their economy suck, in addition to losing the commodity bonus. The gold shaft mining will obviously hurt, but bowsaw, even from what I have seen at professional levels of the game, is a very useful technology. And since, I mean, Egypt did not have a great lumber economy at any time, I think it's justified. And again, should reinforce the civilization identity that I was trying to go for. They do still keep that cheaper market thing as a team bonus. I think I forgot to put it on this document, but it will be displayed properly on the main civilization doc, but I did slightly nerf the market team bonus. It now is like 25 wood more expensive, but still a nice discount to your team. So, last of the major changes I made is that someone commented that why not buy bars as a potential Egyptians campaign? And I was like, that's such a good idea. Obviously buy bars. He was like incredibly cool. And even though I love Shajar al-Dur as a character, I think buy bars is probably a better fit than her. I still want the girl though. She's awesome. And thanks as always to Bloomchen B, Jason Smith, Eric DW, Sim Belmina, Carlos Martinez Caballé, Tristan Oliver, Edelweiss, Divicos Power, and many, many others for input on this Egyptians build. This is without a doubt the most broken build I have ever made, even including my old ones. It needed some help, it needed some love, and fingers crossed, I got it this time. All right, let's move on. Next build, the Moravians. This was a build that I didn't think would get like a lot of interest, and it was, of the recent videos, it didn't do like brilliantly, right? But the people who watch it were like, wow, this is so cool. I'd never even heard of them before. Nor had I. Desert Monk, this one's for you, bud. You introduced me to a whole section of history I knew nothing about. And it turns out that I mostly got the Moravians right, from what it seems. So first of all, I made some clarifications about how the team bonus and the unique unit work. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about those now. Take a look if you're interested. The main thing people were concerned about on this build was the technology glagolitic script. So I've overhauled it substantially based on people's suggestions. First of all, it doesn't give you all of the technologies other people have for free, but they do open up for you to research yourself at a very steep discount. So you still have to do it manually. You can still double up on certain technologies. And now instead of getting 100% of other people's relic gold as well as them, you only get 50% of what they're getting, meaning that you still have reason to go out and get relics for yourself. But if your teammates can get them, ooh, cha-ching, you get all sorts of gold. I also have extended the regional Druzhnik line and Gord to the Bohemians, as recommended by Tomasz over in chat right now. And I have a couple of notes about the history section. Now, Tomasz is going to be responsible for a lot of this, but first of all, a bunch of people said, Nitra, the Principality of Nitra, that's in Slovakia. I am dumb. I say fuck, because I completely botched that one. That one's on me. But as mentioned, Tomasz Stanek in comments had a bunch of fantastic feedback. Let's see if I can get all this right. Tomasz, you clarify to me if I'm getting this right here. So first of all, I said that the city of Brno was like the center of Moravia. It wasn't actually until the 1400s. Like before then, it was mostly just various settlements being watched over by different forts that would later give rise to other more proper cities with those old forts as the foundation. He clarifies that, like, for example, the capital, you could say, would be a fortress. What's that? How do you say this? Mikolčice? Claire, catch me if I'm saying that right, Tomasz. It would be the fortress of Mikolčice as probably a better representative of what the capital, quote unquote, of Greater Moravia was. But probably you couldn't really pick a capital because of just how the region was laid out at this time. Another note, Silesia is more Polish than it is Czech, and in his opinion definitely merits a civ. Keep an eye out for that one in future. Additionally, the Moravians were not federati of Rome. Rome never made any claim to the area after the Marcomannic Wars, and the Protoslavs really only moved in after Rome had vacated the area. Rome did interact with some of the predecessors to the Moravians, but having them feature in its story in history was really just a mistake on my part. Let's see. Moravians were also not true Orthodox. That schism happened well after. They just kind of laid the groundwork of it. And lastly, the existence of Samo is disputed and may well have been very heavily romanticized. I think that's all of the history notes he had. Tomasz is an incredibly accomplished dude who knows a lot about this. I think he is actually a trained academic in this, specifically the field of Czech history. And so I default to him to know whether or not I got all of these clarifications correct. In summary, as per usual, my history sections are not always accurate. And I appreciate you guys clarifying where you can catch them. Thanks, as always, to a bunch of great commenters. Tomasz Stanek, of course, Hans, Desert Monk, Lorenzo M, David GG, Bjarke Kjær, Eric DW, Daniel Munsaka, Sinbelmina, Divicos Power, and many, many others for input on this particular build. Look, I only had a couple of big changes, guys. I actually did this one kind of okay, which was a relief coming after the Egyptians. Moving on to, I think, one of the most elaborate builds I've ever done on the channel, the Polynesians alongside the commenter Sinbelmina. I was nervous about this one. I thought people would be like, wow, what the hell is this? It's going to be stupid and weird. Why are they in the game? But people were actually really positive about this. And I would actually say that this is the build that has required the fewest changes of all time. Who would have frickin' thought it, right? With like 2 trillion regional units and some of the weirdest mechanics in the game. As well as being one of the least likely candidates for an Age of Empires civilization. I'm really pleased with how the Polynesians turned out. Sinbelmina was a great collaborator. You guys, every time one of you guys collaborates with me, it's fantastic. But anyways, let's move on. First one. Commenter, I think it was Bjarke actually, noted that if a catamaran dies, does its pin end early? And the answer to that should be yes. So I've made that change. Also, I think this was also from Bjarke. When you research Kailau, your infantry gain a unique idle animation showing them doing the actual dance, the war dance, and there would be a little bar showing their charge of Kailau above their heads. So 2 little aesthetic changes, but important ones, I think. Also, Eric mentioned in the comments that I kind of overstated how bad the Polynesians' archer line was in the video. He is totally right. Their crossbows would be totally usable in Castle Age, even if they were Garbo late game. I mentioned that I had kind of wanted to not give them crossbow. Excuse me, I got a hiccup. Okay. I had mentioned in the video that I kind of didn't want to give them crossbow and just give them Garbo archers. But as is, they still will have pretty bad archers late game and will only really use them in early and the early stages of mid. So, my mistake there. And some open questions for you guys. I'd like to hear what you think about these ones. First of all, do you think that the Gambeson's technology should hit the long pike? I'm not sure about this one. Why am I not sure about it? Well, the long pike has the potential to be disgustingly powerful. Now, when Sinbelmina and I were discussing this unit, he was like, careful, Kameyuks are actually really, really good, but obviously fabric shields is probably a big part of that. And so we kind of toyed around with how to make them a little more fair, and with the assumption that they wouldn't be as tanky as they are because of fabric shields. And I think we got a good one here, but if we make Gambesons hit them, it's like a mini fabric shields, and I don't know if it would be too much. So I'd like to hear your thoughts there. And secondly, a bunch of people, I think Diego Ramirez was one of the people who said, why isn't the Moai the wonder for the Polynesians? The best answer I have is that was like our number 2 pick. And it's less known who exactly built the Moai than the what was it? Hamanga Imaui. I think that's the name of the current wonder, which we know exactly why and how and where it was built. But the Moai are obviously beautiful and very, very iconic. So if you guys think Moai deserve to be the wonder, we'll make that change. Also, shout out to Bjarke. He did amazing testing for this civilization. He and Simbelmina had this like glorious comment chain talking about the pros and cons of the pufferfish helmets technology. And this mad lad went into the editor and simulated kind of what it would look like to have that technology at play. Bah, I am blown away, and he deserves praise for it. Thanks, Bjarke. That was unbelievable, dude. And also, of course, thanks to Diego Ramirez, Eric DW, Wei Fan, and others for input on this recraft. And of course, huge shout outs to my collaborators, Lorenzo M., Johannes Elfsen, and here, Simbelmina, for all the great work that you guys have done. Look at that! So few changes, guys, and most of them are clarifications. Let's move on to another wacky one. You guys thought the Egyptians were weird. Well, the Novgorodians, I think, might have been even crazier. Like, I was expecting them to go over worse than the Egyptians did. Their training bonus. Oh dear. That was a problem, wasn't it, guys? Again, I gotta shout out Bjark here. He, once again, replicated what the training bonus would look like, both the 100-100 version and this new 3366 version. He sent me the files. I played around with them. 100-100 was redonkulous. Like, that was way too much. The eco was just destructive. But now, the training bonus is now 33% better trained economy, big reduction, and 66 penalty training time for military. And military includes towers now. I was talking with a commenter about this, and even though it kind of sucks that would make it harder for towers to be used defensively, you do have gourds, and so you still will be able to protect yourself. You just can't tower rush at all. Having played around with this bonus in practice now, it feels great on the booming side. Like, on a map like Arena, this would be gross, but the military penalty is actually substantial. Like, I tried my best to rush multiple times with this. I tried knights, I tried crossbows, I even tried tower rushing for fun. Even when you have double the villages of your opponent, it's very hard to do. So I think 3366 will work. We'll see, though. Let's move on. So a couple of clarifications for how the town bell mechanics work. If you re-ring the bell, villagers will run back to the town center to re-transform. They won't just snap back, snap forth on the spot. And you can manually task a villager to the town center to deconvert them early at this point. Next, a bunch of people mentioned that the Piatinia technology was not very good. So now, even though, like, obviously the self-building buildings is cool, it's more of a novelty than actually being impactful, right? And so the cost has now been reduced a bit, and it boosts the training time of your boyar line. So Druzhnik, boyar, scion, boyar. It effectively negates the military training penalty just for the boyar line. This was because I had another commenter say, wow, their military is kind of bland. Can we sex it up a little bit? And I think that this technology kind of signals that the backbone of your army should be boyars. Because also your unique unit, the Tisiatski, cannot train boyars because they are not a barracks, archery range, or stable unit. And as such, I think that this makes their military just have a little bit more zest in it, which it seems to have been lacking. Next, their unique technology, Sovet Gospod, or actually, a commenter clarified, it probably would be pronounced Soviet Gospod. It's just that the Y is not visible in how it's transliterated. Applies to all players. It makes it open season on trading for the entire map. It'd be a public message and a timer, and the message would go,
the secret agendas of the Novgorodian players' Soviet Gospod has resulted in cheap market prices for all. Take advantage of them while you still can.
Dun dun dun! I think that would be very fun. And not only will this make Soviet Gospod not disgusting late game, but it still allows it to be an advantage for you. If you time it well, you will know when you'll be able to make great use for it and when you might take your enemy off guard. So they can't like do all the trades they want in time. It's a lot to juggle and it's a very short window, like 30 seconds. I think this will make the technology way more interesting, a lot more skill testing, and kind of introduce a new feel to the game than we really have on any other civilization. Nextly, this is a weird one. They no longer get the technology banking. Why? Because, as a bunch of people pointed out, even though slinging is banned at tournament level, this would be the best sling civilization in the game by far. And obviously, did the Novgorodians have banking? Duh. Yeah, they certainly did. But we kind of have references to how their merchant economy worked in other elements of the civilization. And this way, it just makes them not too disgusting on the whole sling front. Just a little bit worse. Still, I think they would have the best eco in the game, bar none. This one technology penalty will mean nothing to them. Additionally, I had a commenter recommend that I give them a new wonder, because the one I picked was nice, probably a second best, but this one is so much nicer. Look at the St. Sophia Cathedral. It has all the things I wanted. Those beautiful white walls, the silver domes, the golden one at top, just so pretty, and bigger and grander than the one I had. So just strict upgrade in all ways. This is the new wonder. Additionally, the commenter who recommended that to me was the commenter Manu K. He is the master of all things Novgorod, and I credit him a lot to giving me some history clarifications that I'd like to share with you guys. So not only did he recommend a bunch of the changes that I made here, but he also has this very, very cool Alexander Nevsky campaign that you guys can go out and play right now. I think it was on Ornlu's channel at one point. And he actually shared with me that the Mongol relationship with Novgorod was actually a lot more interesting than I really gave it credit in the history section. So the Novgorod preemptively submitted to them, but then heavily integrated Mongol military tactics and culture, which I did get right. In fact, Alexander Nevsky himself had a fantastic relationship with the Mongols and may have even been adopted by Batu Khan, the leader of the Mongols in the region at the time. That was part of the reason why he had such a relatively easy time contending with the Mongols while also dealing with the Teutonic and Swedish invasions. So just a really cool piece of history that I wanted to make sure to share. And again, shout out to Manu K. In addition to that sexy art, he also has a great campaign that you guys should all go and try out. Beyond him, however, thanks go to Foxy NL, Tristan Oliver, David Adams, Guru Gru, Ziblaki Zongor, I think, Manu himself, and Simbelmina, as well as many, many others for all of the fantastic input on this civilization. And Bjarke for his awesome design and testing that he did with the training bonus thing. That was just so cool to see. And with that, we come to the end. Thank you guys so much for watching. Woo, we did it. Thank you so much. I hope you all are doing fantastically. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've enjoyed the recrafts. I hope you enjoyed chatting. I hope you enjoyed life. And as always, my name is Robbie Howell. And ciao for now, everyone.